First, they made Republicans pay a price in primaries. I mean, when I was out in the country in the spring and summer, in a lot of primaries, Republican primaries, TARP was a red hot target, and then it continued in the general election. And this question about the tax cuts is a fascinating one, because I think so much of this election was about the president and about a reaction to him. And it was my analysis that he overpromised, he overreached, and he underperformed. The fact that he didn't spend every day reminding voters in the last 3 months that he had cut taxes was a remarkable political move, a lost opportunity. As one of the analysts I interviewed for my story Tuesday night said, can you imagine Bill Clinton being out on the stump and not reminding people every day that he'd cut their taxes? I don't know why they didn't. The president, of course, has said this fall it was a mistake, a tactical mistake at the time of the stimulus package, not to have let the Republicans push harder so that they would have more buy-in, that he just right away went with some tax cuts. But then there was the huge political blunder this fall on that.
So what happens now? I mean, there's still serious issues facing the country, especially in these macroeconomic questions. Getting people back to work, getting taxes and spending right so that they neither dry up capital nor leave people who need some looking after helpless and hopeless in the short term.
I'm going to push back a little bit on this notion that it's just about messaging and communications and the marketing of it. I think there's a lot more to it than that. I think it is fundamental policy issues. I think this Keynesian theory of you just have the government pump more money into the economy and that'll fix everything. I think that's wrong. And yes, there might have been some tax cuts in the stimulus plan, but it also did a couple of things. It increased our national debt to a level that's unsustainable. It created a situation in which the private sector and the global economy sees the United States as not being serious about being able to turn the economy around. You still have unemployment at over 9.5% for 14 months. Private sector businesses will not turn around and start hiring again unless they see a longer term sustainable economic future that's predictable. Right now, the private sector is flush with cash, and they're not spending it because they're uncertain as to what the future will hold. The healthcare reform package is going to, the process was a debacle, but I think at the end of the day, the private sector is still wondering what the end results are going to be in terms of taxes, in terms of government takeover of the program, because private sector employers are going to say, I'd rather just pay the fine than have to take on the burden of the additional costs. So there's lots of fundamental policy problems right now in terms of this White House and the Democratic Congress that are having a major impact on the economy.
Are we going to get clarity out of the 112th Congress, John?
I don't think so. I'm skeptical. I think we do have not the communications problem, but there were two big visions out there. There was a vision that Republicans were worried that there was a move in the direction of much more spending. Democrats wanted to move to reform government, to put health care in place. And if you think about, I think both parties will take from this election that we do need to do something about our deficit and debt. And they may say that and want to talk to each other for a little while. But what do they want to do about it? I think the Obama administration will say things like, well, why don't we let the upper end tax cuts expire? And Republicans will say, well, not that sort of deficit reduction. And Republicans will say, look, health care, that's going to be a lot of government spending. We've got a lot of things ahead in that plan. And Democrats will say, no, there's some cost controls in there. We don't want to go in that direction. So the big things are in a sense off limits for both parties. And as much as I would like to have a big summit and deal with these deficit problems, and we've got a deficit reduction commission report coming out, I guess I think there will be a little talk, and at the end of the day, not much action.
Because what interest does either side have in these things not getting done?
Mm-hmm. Well, we saw that when, again, Republicans themselves this last spring, when they wanted a deficit commission put together that 6 of them sponsored. As soon as Obama got on board with it, they filibustered their own bill. So that's evidence of what I think we're going to be seeing more of. They don't want, as we heard Mitch McConnell talk about, the president to succeed. They want a do-nothing Congress so they can hold out till the 2012 presidential elections. That is going to be their key to victory. That's what they want to show, that there is no progress on this end, so they can try to hold that up. And again, over the past, we saw 8 years under previous to Obama, we saw this whole economic structure that was based on tax cuts for the rich, and we talk about spending, the amount of spending that happened under the Bush administration was astronomical. Yet it's the kind of spending that they want. When it's for tax cuts, they're for it. And when it's not, when it's for people that are on the lower rung, they're not for that. So this idea of trickle-down economics that was so popular in the 80s, it's proved not to work either. So we need to be able to find a solution that's good for everybody, because the Republican and the conservative theories and the strategies over the past 8 years under Bush have done nothing but create a bigger divide, shrunk the middle class, and created an elitist country that really has too much influence.
A lot of the new income in the last decade has been captured in the upper reaches of the American workforce. I mean, that much we can agree on, right? Do people at the bottom see the Republicans as having any solutions for them?
So there's a couple of things. Number one, I'm going to push back a little bit, as you would imagine. I think there was too much spending under President Bush, but I think that's something that the Republicans paid a price for. And the Tea Party movement has shooken the Republican Party in terms of spending. But I would say that in terms of the relationship between the Republicans in Congress and President Obama, that started off bad when President Obama, in his first meeting with the Republican leadership, said to them, "No, I won. You do what I do." And in the last couple of weeks, where he said, "I'm driving this car. The Republicans can come along for the ride, but they got to sit in the back seat." So I think there's a lot of rhetoric out there that's not creating an environment of partnership, and I think that's what we have to see over the next coming days, whether that sort of environment for partnership can move forward in spite of that rhetoric. I think there's also an argument to be made that we are in the economic situation that we are in because of Democratic policies to advance home ownership, even in those cases where people really realistically, under normal circumstances, wouldn't buy homes. So that's my pushback on in terms of your question, Ray.
Quickly.
In terms of your question, I think Republicans are going to advance theories that are going to help educate folks, train them, get them ready for jobs, because there is no better social program than a job. And I say that as someone who grew up on welfare. I understand that for families to be able to get out of the circumstances they're in, create a better life for themselves, better circumstances, the only way to do that is through education, hard work, and getting into the right kind of job so that they and their children can advance.
That's true, but it doesn't happen in 1 year. Education and training and investing in your future, when you're in short-term, dire situation, it pays off lifelong dividends, but it's not something you can see the effects of right away. And I guess that's what'll tell the story of the next 2 years.